This is going to be a good show, folks. All right. I see a lot of people in chat already. They're looking forward to this one. Brett, the moderator's there. Thank you, Brett, for dropping that. Brett, see the link above there? That is a link to my guest book, so put that in periodically too. So, guys, this is, of course, is the Anti-Neocon Report with Ryan Dawson. My guest today is a former Air Marshal and Uniform Division Secret Service member, Gary Byrne. He's written a couple books. Crisis of Character is the book we're going to be talking about today. He's written another book called Secrets of the Secret Service. I highly recommend you get both. There is a link above to his Amazon page where you can get the books on there. If you don't mind clicking through our Amazon affiliate link, that helps us out as well, too. So, Gary, welcome to the show. I know we were talking earlier. I have a relative, full disclosure, everybody was also in the Secret Service, Marty Allen, who relayed a lot of the same information on the Clintons to me that you say in Crisis of Character before that book was written. So, as you know, the smear machine from Media Matters and the typical Clintonites came and tried to discredit you, I'd already heard a lot of this information from my own family. So I'll take it to the grave. I believe every word of it. And everybody, you got to get Crisis of Character because we're not going to be able to cover everything today. Welcome to the program. I got a lot of questions for you.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here.
It's so. Before you worked for the Clintons, did you start with Papa Bush? Is that where it began with Bush Sr.?
It did.
Yeah,
it did.
That must have been a dramatic difference. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was. I started in 1991, and George Herbert Walker Bush was president. You know, I referred to him as Papa Bush. And it was in a funny sort of way. They kind of set us up for this stunning. You know, they were so nice and they were so normal. What I would consider normal. They were the first family, but they were humorous. The president himself was kind of a stoic guy. I mean, immediately when I started working around him, I kind of felt like he was a grandfatherly figure. I had a lot of respect for him because of his, pretty much what he had done his whole life. He was a good businessman.
His wife was very nice as well.
She is, and you haven't read the book, you know that I had some funny encounters with her. She was so kind, and I really had a lot of respect for him, especially for the president. And during the Second World War, he's 19 years old. He signs right up for the Navy, and jumps into a torpedo bomber. So they were very kind. Their kids were kind, and then when they lost the election and Bill Clinton got in, it was a vastly different atmosphere that you had to adjust to.
Well, he seemed like a very charming person, fake or not. Can't say that for his wife.
Yeah.
She's about as comforting as a cactus.
So I have an analogy for you.
All right.
When it comes to the Clintons. So Bill Clinton might be the kind of guy you want to sit around with and maybe drink a beer with. But you don't trust him to drive your 27-year-old niece home. Mm-hmm. Where, in my opinion, Mrs. Clinton really, and I know this is kind of hard to say, but again, I'm basing this on my real life experiences, and she doesn't really have any redeeming value in my opinion. She's, I didn't realize how incompetent she was until I started reading the book, and I just thought she was this kind of mean, jackass, so to speak. And then when I started doing research and learned a little bit more about her for both books that I wrote, that's who she really is. She's just this incompetent person that they keep propping up and trying to make her look like, they're literally trying to put lipstick on a pig. And I'm not calling her a pig. I'm just saying, they're trying to take a...
I will. I'll call her a pig. What she does is she invents fantastical conspiracy theories all the time, right, and then condemns other people for having conspiracy theories. But her career starts out working in the Arkansas Mafia and Iran Contra, which was a convicted conspiracy. Right, we had people convicted for conspiracy for Iran Contra, and the Clintons were there from the very beginning, working with Barry Seal and the rest of it before that, and then Mina training pilots to go to Nicaragua to covertly fight the Sandinistas and using contraband as well as illegal narcotics money to finance the whole thing. So of course she's paranoid about conspiracies because she's involved in them, and then she invents them whenever she starts getting cornered on any of her vicious lies. So we were going to talk about her specifically. I want to go over some incidents in the book, the blue glove and the blue vase. We'll start with instead of the vase, let's start with the blue glove incident, because that sort of sums up sort of the identity politics that's even sharper now than it was then.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So the Secret Service Uniform Division has many jobs inside the White House complex and the Secret Service, and one of them is we screen all the guests that come in for tours and for large events. Like for daily business meetings, they're screened at the Northwest and Southwest Gate, but when there's a large event, they come in through the tour side between the east side of the White House and the Treasury Building. And they built this during this structure during the Reagan administration. And it's full of metal detectors, radiation detectors, X-ray machines, that kind of thing. So anyway, this particular morning, I was working in tours at the time, and I was kind of sort of in charge of this event. And I went upstairs to get to the social office, and I got the letter basically of the list of the people that are coming in today. And it was a list. The people were being brought in by Congressman Barney Frank, who was from Massachusetts and was the first openly gay congressman. And I've been around him before, and he was, a decent guy as far as, pleasant and everything. But I always had a hard time being around him because he had this horrendous speech impediment. He had a lisp.
Was he there before Lindsey Graham? Just kidding.
Yeah, he was. So
everybody knows about Lindsay, but whatever. No.
So they might have come in about the same time. So it seems like to me that all of them have been there so long. But anyway, that's a separate issue. So Barney Frank is bringing in this group of people. This is what it said on the letterhead that I had: HIV positive representatives from. There was different groups that were considered gay groups. It was like I forget what they were called back then. It was before they had the names that they have today, but they were basically 2 or 3 groups of gay citizens who had a voice, and Barney Frank was giving them a voice. So
I'm not smiling about the HIV positive thing. I just know what's about to come in the story. It reminded me of this incident. This is my pop culture reference, and I swear I won't do this again. But Iron Sheik from WWE got chest popped for steroids, came back positive, and they're like, your chest came back positive. He's like, that's good, right? Positive?
Yeah.
He said no.
So he's coming in with these representatives. Now here's the thing. It's after the first election, and they're heading towards the second election. So one of the things that the Clintons promised the gay community for their support, for their unwavering support, was that one of the things they were going to do, there were a few things, but one of the things they were going to do was they were going to allow gays in the military. And again, this is one of the recurring themes with the Clintons. They'll promise somebody anything before they have any understanding of what they're promising. None of them had ever been in the military. They had no idea what they were trying to force the military to do. And so there was a lot of resistance. And what they ended up with was don't ask, don't tell. Now, I had been in the Air Force. And actually, I tell a story about I found out that my Air Force roommate at Langley Air Force Base was actually gay. I didn't care. Who cares? He was a good airman. It didn't matter. But, back to the story. So they ended up with don't ask, don't tell, and they were furious. And they were making all kinds of threats and of course, Barney Frank, being the opportunist that he was driving that wedge so he could get more out of the Clintons. And so anyway, to try to appease things, he's going to bring all these people in. I think there's like 24 of them, and they're all on this list. And again, the heading says HIV positive people.
The heading from Hillary's office.
Right, from the social office.
Right.
HIV positive. So that's not a huge thing for us. We deal with, the biggest, when you screen people like we did in the Secret Service, your biggest fear is the flu and hepatitis C. But one of the things that that's paramount about the story, and you kind of mentioned it, is the blue gloves. They were called blue nitrate gloves. And we were actually required by OSHA standards to wear them. Now, some of us wore these black gloves that were leather, and they actually had a lining inside them that was Kevlar that was puncture resistant. Like when you're searching somebody who might have a needle.
Right.
Not particularly guests of the sitting president, but we were also regular.
One guy came in with a gun, and your partner drew her gun on him. So that kind of thing, idiots exist.
In the same room, yeah. So these people come in, and as they're coming in, there's a little bit of communication snafu. The officer at the actual gate where they walk in first lets them in, 2 minutes or a minute early when the officers are just getting ready inside the room. And this one officer, I refer to him in the book as Krusty. He's this Vietnam veteran, and he's this very conservative. He volunteered to go in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. This guy is, the soldier. He's a good cop. Anyway, he's very opinionated. And
he's the guy that gives kids a knife for Christmas.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's the uncle that gave you a knife. He's that guy.
Yeah. He's my family friend that gave me my first gun, my first BB gun when I was 9. Yeah. So anyway, so he comes in, or Barney Frank walks in with these guests, and like I said, they were a minute too early, right? And they are putting on these gloves. So when this guy Krusty sees Barney Frank coming in, he holds his hand up in front of him and he starts snapping the glove on, like making theatrics out of it, so to speak. And so right away, Barney Frank goes on the defensive and says, "Why are you putting on those gloves?" And he looks at him and says, "I think you know why."
Yeah,
so,
what do you think?
Right. So they start discussing back and forth. They screen them. They walk through the metal detectors. There's no problems there. Nobody, and they get through. So as soon as they get in there, Barney Frank sees an opportunity to beat Bill Clinton and Hillary over the head with this. So he acts, how angry he really was, who knows? But he gets her so wound up. Like he demands, before they go any further in the, before they go any further into the mansion, he demands to see the First Lady. So she comes down, he reams her out, and basically they start focusing on blaming the Secret Service. So
for wearing gloves?
Right, exactly. So there's a lot of things they don't know at the time. The procedure, the requirement by the government, and this is another one of those examples. They're running the government and they don't have a clue what any regulation, and I don't expect them to know the little things, but anyway, it wasn't like they just gotten there either. They'd been there 2 or 3 years already. So anyway, I'm working over
the way a victim mentality works is everyone is prejudiced, right? They're just looking for it all day, every day. So if someone's wearing gloves, it's not because they always wear gloves and are required to wear gloves on every guest coming in. It's only because of me, and it's because of AIDS or whatever, right? That's the thinking in their head constantly. And so they kind of verify their own fear because they're looking for it everywhere, and they interpret everything the most negative way. And I can imagine some animated congressman, wealthy liberal, is going to have that kind of attitude and then dump it all on the Clintons. But the rule is those gloves, I don't know if they're blue all the time or whatever, but you do that for school kids. That's everybody.
Right. And the funny thing is when I first started, I'll tell you this real quick and I'll get back to the story. When I first started, I did an event one time where I didn't wear the gloves. And when I went to wash my hands, like I was appalled by, they were just so dirty I couldn't get them clean. And then you wear a pair of gloves, and when you're doing you would think the simplest, cleanest place to ever screen a bunch of people might be, 100 elderly folks coming to see the president. When you're done, those gloves are so dirty, like you just don't, it kind of freaks you out. So anyway, back to the story.
You should tell people some of the weird things that have been found inside purses and whatnot that you wouldn't want to touch.
Right. When I'm done, remind me and I'll tell someone.
I'll come back to that. So,
Yeah.
so
You're right.
Barney Frank is losing his mind on Bill Clinton.
On Hillary.
On Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're over in the East Wing. So I'm over in the West Wing at my post. And my buddy is standing there listening to this. And so Barney Frank basically takes these people and leaves. So then Hillary, she starts that slow burn. She's angry. By the time, she starts leaving the East Wing, my coworkers are calling me on the phone and say, hey, heads up. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but something happened in the mag room, the metal detector room. It involved the uniform division, Barney Frank, and they're blaming us. And she's on her way over. So when she walks over, as she's coming over, I've already gotten 2 phone calls. And it's kind of a side note, but one of the guys that works in the White House flower shop
is walkie-talkie things, or you had cell phones then?
No, we had no cell phones. We're just using radios, and we had earpieces. Yeah, we had the earpieces in. So I walk up to the florist. I'm like, hey, just a heads up, the first lady's on her way over, and she's angry. Something happened. He's like, which way is she coming from? And I pointed, and he went the other way. And it was just so comical. And this guy sees her every day, and his name was Ron. He was great. Anyway, I can't say enough nice things about 99% of the people that were permanent employees at the White House. They were incredible. But anyway, so Hillary comes over and she walks in to the Oval Office and she starts, no exaggeration, about a 40-minute tirade on the president. And she's blaming us and she's blaming Barney Frank and she's blaming us. It got to the point where she's demanding that President Clinton fire the entire uniform division, which back then right, which back then was about 1,000 officers, male and female, every walk of life, every skin color, religion, no religion. We were a cut of the country, and to the point where he's literally defending us. And I'm standing outside. The screaming got so loud that we closed off the kind of middle hallway and made everybody go around. And I kind of turned away George Stephanopoulos. He came down the hallway, and I'm like, oh, you might want to wait before you go in there. And and we had the outer doors kind of closed, and she just went on and on and on. And to the point where this agent who's standing post with me, he turns to me and he goes, oh, my God, he's defending you. And I'm like, well, he's defending us. We're the Secret Service. He goes, oh, no. You're the uniform division. This shit's on you. So it went on and on and on. Finally, she leaves. She walks out, and she walks past me to go upstairs to the second floor of the West Wing, where she had an office in the legal counsel's office also. She had an office in the in the East Wing, the social wing, and then also in the legal counsel's office. And so anyway, she screams and yells, and she used, and listen, I'm not offended by foul language, but she had no idea what had happened. She didn't know any of the facts. All she knew was they promised this gay community something. They couldn't deliver it, and now they're being held accountable for it. That's really what it came down to. So within a couple minutes of her leaving,
she had no idea what was going on, but moral indignation and outrage is sport for them.
No, absolutely. She had to blame somebody. So this guy named Ron, I forget his last name. It'll come to me in a minute. I'm sure it's in the book, but he was the undersecretary for law enforcement. He was this very nice former college professor. I don't know, he's probably early 40s. He was very nice guy. He treated us very well. He was a good guy. He always was polite. He was the this is when the Secret Service was in the Treasury Department, which was where it started. This guy was the Undersecretary of Treasury for law enforcement. He had the Secret Service, the ATF, and a couple other agencies. But anyway, so he gets wind of what happened. He comes over, and instead of going to see the Clintons, he goes to the officers. He goes to the tour section and says, please, everybody that was involved, bring them down to the metal detector room. Let's talk. He was not accusatory. He's told these guys, tell me what happened. And they told him the story. And he said, okay. Then he went into the East Wing to the first officer, the first post there. He said, hey, tell me what you saw and what you heard. All I want to know is what happened. I know this is not what they're portraying.
Like a leader is supposed to do.
Exactly. I mean, and so
I
anyway,
mean, anybody with kids knows to do that. What's your
right,
story? What's your
exactly,
story? You know?
right, exactly. So then he makes his way over to the Oval Office area, and he walks. He's talking to a couple of the agents, and he says something to them, and they point at me. So he comes over to me, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Good, sir. Good to see you." And we knew each other. He used to come in at night. He was a single guy, and he lived a very. It seemed to be a very interesting single guy life.
Oh, is this the same person that was witnessed on the desk with somebody earlier? Oh, that's okay. That's,
That was a Secret Service agent.
all right. We'll come around to that later.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So, so he was a little bit more private, but he always showed up. Not always, a lot of times he showed up at night, right before the West Wing tours were over, and he would have his very pleasant, usually extremely attractive young woman with him, and it was hardly ever the same woman, and not good guy. So anyway, so he comes over, he says, "Hey, okay, so what happened?" So I said, "Well, I got a couple phone calls," and he's like, "Okay," and he said, "So when she comes over here, what is she?" I said, "Well, she just unloaded on the president. She's demanded he fire us, and she's
All of you.
yeah."
I can imagine Bill Clinton be like, "You can't just do that."
Yeah. Yeah, and he says, "What?" I said, she demanded he fire the whole uniform division. And he goes, "What did the president say?" I said, "It got to the point where he's defending us like unbelievable because he realized you just can't do that." And he's smart enough to realize that they don't know all the facts. And so anyway, and he had been working with us for a while, and we treated him well. I mean, besides the fact that years later I write this book, I mean, we kept a lot of secrets, and there's still stuff that I've never written about, and I never will, because I'm not trying to burn down the whole government or destroy the Secret Service. I just wanted to get the truth out. So anyway, so she like disappears, and that's that. And then then the Ron, the undersecretary, he gets the information that he needs. So he goes back over and he gets the lieutenant to get the captain. He basically takes all these guys that were involved in the metal detector room out to breakfast. Across the street at Old Ebbets buys them breakfast. They all get to vent and joke around, and then life goes on. And it kind of went away. And she, of course, publicly they tried to blame the Secret Service. There was a public statement made about it. You can Google it. I'm sure there's stories about it, but it just kind of went away. And life went on, and then the next scandal popped up,
Right. Well, tell people now some of the interesting items that are found on searches. Like, what kind of idiot would you're going to get searched, right?
Right.
Seems like it. So
there's a couple
what kind of stuff were hidden in purses and in bags?
Like some of the stuff you can almost say you can understand. Like when you're screening somebody, you're screening 5,000-10,000 people in the middle of Oshkosh, Wisconsin in the summer, and you're in their home territory. It's understandable that somebody all of a sudden realizes that they're walking through a metal detector and they're still wearing a gun, or they have a gun in their handbag. And so that's acceptable, sort of, But when you're coming to the White House,
right,
and you've been standing in line for an hour and a half, and you get all the way up to the metal detector, and you remember that in the camera bag that you have a 25 automatic. You panic. He takes the gun and puts it in his pocket. And then when he gets up to the metal detector, I'm standing right in front of the metal detector. And my coworker, Yolanda, is standing behind me, and she's screening with a handheld the people that set off the metal detector. So, in other words, she's verifying that it's nothing. This guy walks up, the metal detector goes off, he puts his hand over his pocket, and he says, "I have a gun." So I lunge forward about a foot, I grab both his hands, and I can tell he's terrified. And now I'm holding his hands. Now, as he said, "I have a gun," Yolanda heard that. She turns around. She has the handheld metal detector on a loop on her arm. It is dangling from her arm, and she has her Sig Sauer 228 pointed at this guy's chest. She goes right past my face and head, and she's pointing this thing right at his chest, and she says, "If you so much as twitch, I will fucking kill you." And I was like, I have never been so proud to work with her in my life than then. I'm like, I am convinced that later on I told her, I said, listen, you couldn't have made that any better. I mean, you did exactly what you needed to do to protect us, and especially me. And she said, she was so funny. She goes, I got your back, Bernie. She called me Bernie. Well, my last name is Bernie. So anyway, and so I told the guy, I said, take a step forward, and I said, do not twitch.
She's the real life Samuel L. Jackson or whatever.
No, exactly. No, so I slowly pull the guy's hands out, and I put my hand down. I make sure I separate the gun. I reach in, I pull the gun out, and then somebody comes up. I think I hand her the gun, and I spin him around, and put handcuffs on him, and then we've stopped the metal detector room, and we're clearing everybody out. And then somebody comes up and assists me. We make the arrest. We clear the pistol, and then he gets arrested. And here's the funny thing: do you remember where he worked?
No, I forgot.
He was a postal. He was a postal worker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and
postal.
This is the 1990s, and by this time we've had
go postal age. Yeah,
it was actually a term.
Right.
I mean, at that time, the postal workers had had more gunfights than the Secret Service. That's how.
Well, it was during the .com rise where people could order things through the internet. Where before it, there was UPS and postal work and letters and all. There was this huge demand of mail all of a sudden because people could order things to their home and they couldn't handle it and they were losing their minds and they were shooting people. And postal in the 90s, kids, was just a term. The postmen were shooting more people than people get shot in school. It was all the time. Right.
It usually revolved around somebody eventually getting terminated, which is almost impossible to do, and then they came back with a gun. So anyway. So this guy gets arrested, and he ends up being a postal worker, and and life goes on. But it was just one of those things. And the funny thing is like, that's just another day at the White House. Like crazy stuff like that happened all the time. Not always guns, but always something.
Do you ever find any weird sexual devices and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. A couple times at the White House, and then the first time I ever saw it was we were down in New Orleans, Louisiana. We were in, near New Orleans, and we're doing a large event. It's in the summer. It's hot, and the arena they're going into is air conditioned, and so we don't have a metal detector on. We don't take metal detectors usually on the trips. We hand search everything. And of course, there's thousands of people in line. They see what we're doing. And this woman comes up, drops her bag on the table. I start going through it, and I pull out a vibrator. And she goes, "Oh, I forgot I had that." And I'm like, "Well, I need you to take the batteries out of it." So and I just make sure that that's what it was. And I have gloves on, but I'm like, "Oh my God, I just, not, it's just so out of context. It's just so bizarre." And of course, everybody at the table, we're mixed, we're a couple, mostly guys and a couple women. And of course, we're all snickering, and she was not offended, which made it even more humorous later on. And then she took her device and put it back in her bag.
I thought I got rid of all of those.
Exactly, almost like that nonchalant. And then another time, we were in Branson, Missouri, and this woman's in line, and she lives out in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and she drives a Jeep with no top on it. And she leaves her like where she is so safe, and she's so out in the middle of nowhere. When she comes in at night, she leaves her purse in the Jeep, with no top on it. So one of my coworkers, a woman standing next to me, is searching her bag, and she pulls her hand out with a huge spider on her hand. It's called a brown recluse spider. It was giant.
Yeah, they can kill you.
Right, and of course she flings it and screams, and I jumped. And the spider goes flying across the table onto the floor. And, of course, everybody standing there clears out like she just threw an atomic bomb. And I'm laughing.
It's worse. It's a spider.
Oh, I know, man. So somebody runs up to stomp on it, and somebody says, "No, don't do that." And then actually one of the people gets out of line and, pulls out a piece of paper and picks it up, and I'm like, and walks off with it. I'm like, okay, whatever. So, but that's just one example, or just a couple examples. We found all kinds of stuff. One day when I shut down the metal detector room, at the end of the day, I was running the metal detector room All the tours were through. The last person came through. As soon as the last person comes through, a canine officer gets in line behind them and starts sweeping behind the last public tour. And I start close. I tell everybody they can go, and everybody's getting ready to leave, and we're talking and joking around. And I look down at the conveyor belt, and there's a pile of money laying there. There's 5 $100 bills, and I'm like, holy shit! So I'm looking around. The first thing I think of is they're testing me. The service has done this, and they're testing me. So I go over pick up the phone. I call the control center. And I go, hey, I just found 5 $100 bills on the conveyor belt. And of course, they're like, oh, okay, we'll be right over. Like, take us to lunch. And I'm like, no, it's got to be reported as lost or stolen property. So anyway, somebody gets me an evidence bag. I put it in the evidence bag. I count it. I write down the serial numbers on a piece of paper. I do the whole 9 yards. It takes me about an hour, but eventually, I'm kind of done for the morning. So I walk over to the watch commander's office back then it was under the old executive office building. And I tell them what happened. There's a little report on there. So by DC law, after 120 days, if nobody claims it, it becomes the finder's. So after 120 days, I go over there and nobody knows anything about it. There's nothing in because I saw this captain put it in the safe. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing in the safe. There's no envelope. There's no nothing. And it just went away. So basically I found out they took the money after 90 days and went out and bought themselves lunch and brought in food and so anyway.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
it's government.
Yeah, no,
that's
right.
Minor. Yeah.
Right.
They spend more on stationery than that.
No, but it really rubbed me the wrong way. Not because they took it from me, and they kind of did. I guess they kind of did the same thing I was going to do, but I was going to use it for us, for the officers. To spring for lunch for all the guys standing post, and not for the managers sitting in air-conditioned offices. You know what I mean? So anyway.
Oh well, you did the honorable thing in reporting it, and then they stole it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about Bill a little bit. Well, I'm not done bashing on Hillary. Oh, well, let me say there's some chat questions. I have to read them because they sent money. So. I gotta read exactly what they say. So the first question was about Hillary Clinton, and then they ask, "Does she smell like sulfur?"
Yeah. So back in the day, she did not. She actually smelled pretty good. She wore perfume. I was in the gym with her 1 or 2 times. The Secret Service had a gym there, and she was allowed to use it a couple times before they got the gym. Working up in the 3rd floor of the residence. Anyway, she even in the gym she smelled like perfume or smelled like a lady, so to speak, and I use that term loosely. So
yeah, lipstick on a pig, perfume on a pig. Didn't they have to build like a place for them to jog? Because what was her name? What was the code name for Clinton again?
He was Eagle. She was Evergreen, and then their daughter was Energy. So it was all E's. Every family protectee family they start with 1 letter, and then all their code names, and they're usually published. You can actually Google them and find out. Like Reagan was Rawhide, Mr. and Mrs. Bush were Timberwolf and Tranquility. So anyway,
the eagles are not monogamous birds. I take it. No.
Yeah, apparently not. So he was Eagle.
Is Evergreen the code for Evermean?
No, I never. It's funny. I never thought of that. We did have. We're human beings. We have senses of humor. We're overworked in the Secret Service when I was there, and our minds wander, and we came up with some funny stuff and code names for different people, and So
yeah, I've heard some of it before.
Yeah. There used to be, when W was president and his daughters were young, and they had when they were underage, they got caught quite a few times in bars underage. And, it's not the Secret Service's job to tell them where to go. We just kind of make sure they're safe. And it got to the point where we started referring to them. I forget what their actual call signs were, but we started calling them gin and tonic. So.
Yeah, there you go. Gin and tonic. Well, I remember Al Gore's son got like a 90-mile-an-hour traffic ticket on the island where I grew up.
In North Carolina?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
down in yeah, so you know about that? Yeah.
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 Was he in the Outer Banks or New Bern? I
Outer
think
Banks.
it was.
Yeah,
Hatteras.
I'm from Hatteras. Yeah, I'm from Buxton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We vacationed in near Kill Devil Hills.
Okay, well, my brother lives there now. I have a twin.
Okay.
He lives up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So
Or
yeah.
Kitty
So
Hawk.
right. So he gets this speeding ticket. I'll tell you if you want a quick funny Al Gore
I
story.
know the cop. Oh yeah, my younger brother played him in football and stuff too. Like I got some Clinton and Gore stories myself. But
Yeah. So when they first get elected, Al Gore's family's letter for their names was S, and he was originally Sawhorse, but he didn't like that, so they had to change it to Sundance. So I always thought that was kind of funny.
Okay, that's
Anyway.
funny. He complains about the sun now.
Yeah, right.
Now, before he was a global warming alarmist, or I guess before he was publicly an alarmist, he was an actual alarmist. Can you tell that story about hearing all the bells ring and it was Al Gore?
Yeah, so he's Al
And
Gore's
this harkens back to Hillary Clinton's wild conspiracy theories, by the way, people. And this is in the book. There's so many funny stories in Crisis of Character. The link to get it is in the chat right now, and it's also in the description if you're watching this on BitChute or YouTube. But tell everybody about Alarmist Gore.
Yeah, so they just did millions of dollars worth of renovations, and the residence for the vice president is at the Naval Observatory up on Massachusetts Avenue. It's this old admiral's. It's an old Victorian house that belonged to the admiral in charge of the Navy, years ago, and it was converted to the vice president's residence. And they did all kinds of renovations. Anyway, they had just done a renovation where they had new alarm systems. Not just like intrusion alarms, but monitor the air, fire, water, everything, state-of-the-art stuff. So, and all the alarms go to a control center at the vice president's residence, basically right across the front yard or the yard, across this little driveway. And there's a building there that does entry control, and the uniform division's control center is in there, and the agent's break room is in there. And so one day they're sitting there, and all of a sudden, they get a smoke alarm, and then a fire alarm, and then a radiation alarm.
The radiation alarm.
Right. And they're like, holy shit.
So Hillary was there. No.
Yeah. So they jump up, and they make a broadcast over the radio. The uniform division guys start responding. The agents, they go into the residence. And now the outer doors are locked, even during the day. But everybody has a key, the Secret Service, so they let themselves in. They run up the steps, and as they run up the steps, at the top of the steps, there's Al Gore in either on a step stool or a chair, and he has pulled the smoke detectors and the alarms out of the ceiling because he thinks they're cameras. And he's saying to them, "Who told you could put these cameras in?" And they're like, "They're not cameras. They're monitors. They're not even monitors for sound. They're monitors."
And this is a guy that invented the internet.
This is the guy that invented the internet,
right.
And he was also responsible for the movie Love Story. Apparently, he said that was written about him and Tipper. So, whatever. So anyway, the agents are like, they don't know what, and the UD guys, they're like, they don't know what to do, and he just kind of goes on a little bit of a rant. And then he gets off the stool and he walks away. So they call the technicians. They have to come back. And so like later on, when it gets up to the management of the Secret Service, they were pissed. Like, this was expensive. And, although the people that are in office think money grows on trees, agencies have budgets. And, so they had to come in and fix the stuff. And, they had to reassure him that there was no, and we had a similar thing with Bill and with the Clintons when they first got to the White House complex. They wanted to change the entire phone system because they thought the Bushes would have bugged it. Or
did they want to make it available to the Chinese?
Well, I'm not sure about that. Based on what I know now, it's entirely possible. So
my audience already knows. So yeah.
Yeah. So just to make this quick, they did replace a phone system that was less than 3 years old, and after it was all done, And AT&T said, okay, that's $25 million. They're like, what? They're like, yeah, you have a budget for this, right? And they're like, well, no. And they said, well, here's a work order from the manager, I forget her name, saying they wanted a new phone system. So we gave you a new phone system. It's $25 million. So that was a big scandal.
That's the normal price when the government's paying.
Well, yeah, right. They didn't just replace the phones. They made them replace the entire computer system that runs it. I mean, this is a lot of work. The phones, there's hundreds and hundreds of phones in the White House complex. You can imagine. And then
Bill did get a hotline to Monica and others, so I guess it was worth it.
Exactly. So just another funny story.
I wonder if he had one straight to the Prime Minister of Israel. So I'm going to skip the blue vase story and let people just get that in the book, but that is a good one. Ends up with Clinton Shiner, and it's funny.
Right.
Lipstick in a towel. You want to save that? I think people should read that too. It's kind of what it sounds like. But I don't want to tell all the this stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good one, and we're gonna get a little darker now, talking about the Arkansas Mafia. Well, one quick intermediary story, and then we'll get into the dark stuff. Could you relay that story about Bruce Lindsay and Bill Clinton and this mysterious medicine or whatever he had?
Yeah. So President Clinton gets elected. He's in the White House for the first week, and literally they don't know anything. They don't even know where the bathrooms are. And so anyway, President Clinton hasn't had time to find a White House doctor. So President Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Papa Bush, his doctor was a doctor named, I think it was Boyd. And so Dr. Boyd says to the Clinton administration, to the president, and basically he said it to President Bush before they switched office, was, I'd be glad to stay on for a week or even two until they get settled. And so they said, yes, that would be fine. And so one day, almost every day, the president, first thing he does is he goes down and he sees the doctor, gets his blood pressure checked, before his workout or sometimes after their workouts. And so anyway, Bill Clinton walks in with Bruce Lindsay, who's this, Bill Clinton's easily 6'2".
Arkansas attorney. Yeah.
Right. He's his childhood friend. That's the thing you have to remember. This is the guy that Bill Clinton's mother used to turn to and say, Bruce, you take care of my Billy. He told me that right to my face. So anyway, this is his childhood friend who's now an attorney and takes care of what I, describe as the dark, illegal shit. So anyway.
Is he quite tall also?
No, he's not. He's the opposite. Bruce is a small guy. He's nice. He's pleasant, but once you are around him, you know who he really is. So Bruce hands the doctor this clear vial, like a medicine vial. You would draw fluid out with a syringe. It's a small glass vial with like a metal top on it, and there's no label on it. He hands them two of them, and he says, the president gets a shot of this twice a day. And the doctor says, okay, no problem. What is it? Where's the paperwork? He goes, no, there's no paperwork. You just give him a shot. Now, the Secret Service agent is standing right there, and of course, his sphincter slams shut, and he doesn't know what to do. Because he realizes these people he doesn't even know are trying to inject the president of the United States with an unknown substance. So he's not Bill Clinton from Arkansas anymore. He's the president of the United States. He's the leader of the free world. And so anyway, so there's some back and forth, and the doctor's like, I cannot inject him. You guys don't realize what you're. And he literally says, based on what the agent told me later on, he really says, look, you're not in Arkansas anymore. We cannot do this. And basically, Bruce and the president have a sort of a private conversation, and Bruce turns to the doctor and says, your services are no longer needed. And he grabs his bag and he walks out. And I always
do what we want, or we'll fire you.
What's that?
Do what we want, or you're fired.
No, exactly. And they just said,
isn't that something? They're all for these giant government programs, right? But when it comes to rules and regulations for themselves, they don't want to obey any of the rules and regulations. That's for everyone else.
Right, which is by definition a dictator. That's how I framed Hillary Clinton. That's how I framed them all. They want all these government rules and regulations, all these giant programs. They want you to have to do A, B, C, D, all the way down to, X before you can get one thing, but they want to be able to walk through all of it. So anyway, Dr. Boyd leaves, and it was reported. It was in the news. It's still Google. You can Google it. We found information about it when we were writing the book. And he basically went back to his practice, and that was that. And then they hired a military doctor, which is not unusual. There was one that was kind of there for a short period of time, and then they got Dr. Mariana, who was a naval doctor. She was a captain, which is like a colonel in the other branches of the service. And she was his doctor for almost the whole time. And then he had other doctors that would come in and consult, like from outside for different things. And so anyway.
I have some questions from chat. Well, I have some donations from chat. 1313 just sent $20 but didn't write a question. And Gudmundur Thor Carlson sent $3 but did not have a question. So I guess you guys are testing the new system. It does come through. Comment or question is fine. Serious or silly, either way. Prefer serious. If you're going to be silly, make sure it's actually funny, though. All right, so that is just odd that I just wanted to point out that story of like daily injections to Clinton, who looks like a Manchurian candidate sometimes, but who's known for drug use also, and wild with women and whatever. And,
right.
They want to regulate everybody, but, it's typical hypocrisy. They don't want to do it themselves. We're going to get to Vince Foster in a minute. I know people are wanting me to ask about that.
Sure.
I'm leaving you hanging so that, you'll stay. This is typical radio stuff. But so you'll get the juice at the end. But and we're going to talk about the Arkansas mob, too. We're going through the light. Well, there isn't really lighthearted stuff, but we're getting a little darker as we go. I want to talk about Hillary Clinton's demeanor towards the military or people in uniform, period, and the way she can cuss like a sailor.
Yeah.
Did you ever witness her completely melt down?
Yeah.
Because she talked about temperament in the election a lot, right? And when the one she lost.
Right.
Again, the second one she lost. She kept talking about temperament. And so how was her temperament from what you saw?
Yeah, her temperament was horrendous. It was very fluid. It went from, being around somebody who could help them, donors or whatever, somebody who she basically had to be nice to, I'll tell you, part of a quick story where I got in a disagreement with one of her staff members, and 15 minutes later, this first lady standing in front of me outside the Oval Office calling me an asshole, that they should have fired the entire uniform division. She hates us, blah, blah, blah. 40 minutes after that, she introduced me to a tour from Arkansas that a group of people that she supposedly knows, and pats me on the back and says, "This is our favorite officer in the Secret Service. We've been working with Gary, every day since we got here. We greatly appreciate you're going to love his tour." She's like Jekyll and Hyde.
This is right after she berated you, right?
Not more than 40 minutes. Yeah. So, she's just this angry person. And, I've given it a lot of thought, clearly. I've written about it and have talked about it thousands of times. And I've given a lot of thought. And I think one of the reasons, I'm no psychologist, but I'm good at human behavior, observing it. And I think one of the things is maybe she, that makes her so angry is she realizes she's so damn incompetent and she's so far in over her head, and she doesn't have the vocabulary to articulate what she really wants. It just cracks me up to see the way she blows up. She's blown up on. I've seen her blow up at the military people, the aides that work at the White House, berating them in a similar fashion. There's a great story that came out right after I wrote the book. A former military canine handler, a woman, came out and told this story, and then a Secret Service agent actually verified it too. Retired agent was that this woman was sweeping a condo that the First Lady was going to stay in overseas somewhere, and it had been swept once. They were sweeping it again, and because the cleaning staff had been in there anyway. While she's doing the sweep, Hillary Clinton comes into the suite, and the agent, having seen this happen before, grabs the girl and the dog and says, get out of here, move out of the way, and get out of her way. And she's like, well, I got to finish my sweep. He's like, no, you don't understand. And that quick, she sees the dog and the handler. She comes over. She starts screaming and cussing at her. Get that effing dog out of my face. Get them out of here. Who the hell, And the girl was like freaked out, but she's an NCO in the military, in the Air Force.
This is the kind of person that's perpetually rude to waitresses.
Absolutely.
You know what that type, like, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly a good way to describe her. No matter what the server does, it's wrong. And they berate them in public because somehow she thinks that makes her look better or tougher or whatever. It's like the story she tried to tell when she was running where they landed in Bosnia under fire, So anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we discussed this before on air, before it went live. I was giving my theory of her kind of three-prong denial, right? This is from a psychological point of view. What I've seen her do, her pattern over and over again, is first, deny, deny, deny. That's like every common criminal. Just deny it no matter what, no matter how much evidence, whatever. Then when forced to, when it's like overwhelming evidence that whatever they're being accused of must have happened, it's partial. They'll partially admit it, but blame shift to someone else. And then the third step is to invent a wild conspiracy theory. So you saw that with Ambassador Stevens and Benghazi, and rather than owning up to it, it ended up blaming the entire thing on a YouTube video released in July. This happened in September, where Arabs just got mad because somebody was making fun of Prophet Muhammad, and the video had less than 2,000 views for months. Right? We have more than that right now.
Right.
It's all blame the Russians when the DNC was hacked and Seth Rich was killed by somebody.
Right.
Somebody. They blame Vladimir Putin and Russia, right? It's always some wild conspiracy. The thing with changing all the fire alarms and all that. Oh, they're spying on us. The Secret Service is spying on us. Like, Secret Service doesn't have to spy on you. If they want something to happen to you, all they got to do is nothing, and someone will go right on in and get you.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right, and your smartness impresses me. That's exactly how I frame it. And one of the examples I always use, like for your listeners that are younger, much younger than I am, if you go back and you look at all the sexual scandals that Bill Clinton was accused of, and you nailed it. It didn't happen. It's not true. And then when evidence comes out, they do a couple things when it's that. They go a little bit further. First, they accuse somebody else of doing it or being responsible for it, and then they attack the person who supposedly was the victim. Mm-hmm. It was the victim, and then they try to make it look like everybody else is doing it. And
this is a Republican conspiracy or something.
Right. And one of the things, like all the crazy stuff, and I don't want to get off track here, but all the crazy stuff that's going on right now in the United States with President Trump, one of the outcomes of all this, all these accusations that there's no evidence of, and all these conspiracy theories, one of the things that's going to come out of this is, and it's not their main motivation, but it's like it also helps Bill Clinton's reputation, is every time they try to tarnish President Trump, in their minds, it raises Bill Clinton. He doesn't look quite as bad as he did when he left office. So by the time Trump leaves office, if they can get anything to stick to him, then that's like a byproduct of what they're doing.
It's weird too, because if you want to criticize him for his policies, like assassinating people and stuff, that's one thing. But that's not even what they do. They came up with like a dozen women that accused him of rape or something, and all of them dropped their charges all of a sudden. And what I thought was hilarious that got Hillary totally triggered was during the presidential debate, whether you hate Trump or not, you got to respect troll level 11 here. He took all of Bill Clinton's accusers and sat them in the front row, so Hillary would have to look them in the face the whole time she was talking.
Yeah. I tried to get in on that. I tried to get them to put me up there too.
Oh, that would have done it.
No, we tried to do it. He actually, I don't know if you know this, but
they should have put Ray McGovern there too, because she had him arrested for turning his back on her.
Yeah.
72 years old or something, and all he did is turn his back, and she had 2 government thugs throw him on the ground and break his arm. And she's a monster, man. Well, I'm glad. I wasn't a big fan of either one of them, but I was just like, please let Trump pull this off, because I can't imagine anything worse than Hillary Clinton, other than maybe like John Bolton or something. I mean, you have to get creative to get worse than her.
Right. That's pretty much my motivation for deciding to write the book. I mean, the first book, I never would have, if you'd asked me in 2010, about writing a book, I'd have laughed in your face. And I literally laughed in my face to my co-writer when he asked me about doing it, and told him he had no idea what he was talking about. But it came down to this, and I'll try to make it quick and simple. If Hillary Clinton did run and she got elected, how can I look my kids in the face when our entire lifestyle changes? I've been a hunter since I was a child. We have a gun collection. My biggest fear was that all that freedom would disappear. And how do I look my family and my kids in the face and say, this is, maybe I could have done something. So I kind of flipped, and I decided that I needed to tell the truth. Everybody's always talking about, both sides of the aisle talk about transparency. So I gave them transparency, what real transparency is. And obviously the left doesn't like it because it makes them look bad, but it is the truth. It is what happened, and it's as simple as that. If it bothers you that much, then maybe behave better. So.
Marcus Will just sent 3. I don't know if the questions aren't coming through or what, but this is what you'll do. Oh, I saw your super chat, Marcus. Can you just write it in the chat, and Brett, can you grab it? So I'll ask him there. See, I've been kicked off of super chats for telling the truth, and I've been kicked off of Streamlabs for telling the truth. So now I'm using it like the backup version, and it's kind of new, and we're trying to figure it out now. The important thing is the donations are coming through. The bad part is the questions were coming through, so either no one's asking them or there's something wrong with it, and my tech person isn't here right now. But anyway, just write it regularly. There's only 3 of you, so I'll figure it out, and I'll try and keep an eye on it. So Marcus and 1313 and Gudmundur Thor, just ask it. Brett will grab it, and we'll get it answered. So sorry about that. It's tech problems, but that's this is the free speech era, right? I haven't even given a reason. I'm not even getting into my problems, but yeah, it's just something else. We have theoretical physicists on the show, congressmen on this show, Secret Service agents, and it's whatever. We're fake news, right? So, Vince Foster.
Okay.
Do you think the Clintons are capable? I mean, the joke is the Clinton body count. So and so got Clintoned, whatever. We know that they're deep with the mob. We know they worked with Iran Contra. They were caught up in that. I can't remember if I said that in this stream or before. But yeah.
Yep.
Is that beyond their, what something that these people would do?
No, but I don't think it is. But that's not exactly what happened, and I can explain to you.
All right.
So they knew Vince Foster really well. And they were friends from Arkansas. There were even rumors that Vince and Hillary had an affair, or were having an affair.
Nah, he's male.
Well, yeah, and that's true. But here's the thing: like when it comes to her sexuality, the only thing I can tell you is like I heard one good story that I can tell you when I'm done with this one. And when I say story, it came from a Secret Service agent that it happened to. So I take it as money in the bank.
My family member walked in on her. I'll tell you that at the end after that. Yeah.
That's who told me. So I did.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, so Vince Foster had a lifelong issue with very, very deep, dark depression. And he worked with Hillary Clinton for many years, and she was known down there in Arkansas.
I think we just found the cause of his deep, dark depression.
Well,
he worked with Clinton for years.
Right, there's a lot to be said for that. So Hillary's in Washington. Everything she does is failing, and she's looking ridiculous in the press. She's not actually an elected official. She's just supposed to be the first lady. This is what's going on in the press at the time, and they're hammering the crap out of her. So Bill and Hillary decide that they need to bring Vince Foster up to help protect Hillary, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. He hates Washington, and I'm not trying to, he's an Arkansas small lawyer, and Washington is a brutal, mean place, man. It's crazy. So anyway, he comes up there, and everything she's involved in keeps going to shit. And every time something goes wrong, she berates him again and again. And I've saw this at least 3 times, where I heard it twice. Like, in other words, I was down the hallway from where it was happening, and I knew it was them. And then one time it happened right in front of me. So, and it was, whenever something like this happens, we pass it on to each other, to the agents that are on post and the officers that relieve us, each other. And, they have to know what's going. You can't leave them blindsided. And so anyway, everybody knew how she behaved around Vince. And basically, in my opinion, she berated him and drove him until he snapped. And I do believe he killed himself. I do not believe he killed himself in Fort Marcy Park. I believed where he killed himself was controversial, and I don't believe it was the White House, but I believe he killed himself somewhere where they needed to dump his body. So I believe they rolled his body up in in a carpet, and somebody dumped his body.
The carpet matches evidence.
So there's carpet fibers all over his suit, and then the bottom of his shoes, typically, based on expert opinion, there was not enough dirt from the parking lot for him to walk through it. You know what I mean? And then here's something you probably don't know, and most people don't know. So he gets found by the park police. He's found in Fort Marcy Park. It's the park police's jurisdiction. They realize he's got a White House pass. They recognize the pass right away. The first thing they do is they call the Secret Service headquarters and say, look, we just found a body in Fort Marcy Park. He's got a White House pass on. We're just giving you a heads up. We're hanging up and notifying the FBI. And the White House, the headquarters says, no problem. Thank you for the heads up. What's the name on the pass? And they say Vince Foster. They're like, okay. So they sit on it for a couple of minutes, and then the phone call comes around from the FBI saying, hey, the Park Service just found a body that they believe is Vince Foster's in Fort Marcy Park. So the FBI says, first thing we need you to do, if you would, was post an officer outside Vince's office. Does he have an office? Yes, it's in the West Wing. Where? Legal counsel's office upstairs. Could you post an officer on it? Absolutely. And lock it, because it's going to be part of the chain of evidence, So anyway, that comes into the story later. So the park police, normally, my experience there was the FBI would run roughshod over everybody and take control. But for some reason they don't. They leave it up to the park police to do the investigation. They admit that it's their jurisdiction, which is not normally what the FBI does. So anyway, in my experience. So anyway, so the park police does not have the facility to test the firearm. So they go to the Metropolitan Police Department, the Washington, D.C. Police Department, and they say, absolutely, you can use it. So they take the gun there, and the firearms technician, the expert, the revolver that Vince supposedly killed himself with is an old revolver. It made before 1900. It doesn't have locks on the cylinder. So in theory, the cylinder spins on a shaft. You picture an old cowboy movie revolver. It spins on a shaft. Well, this gun was so old that the way it was designed, that cylinder could actually back off the shaft. And once in a while, you had to turn it back on so it would be in the right spot to line up with the barrel. So anyway, they go to test the gun, and the first time they pull the trigger, it will not fire because the cylinder's not lined up. The guy has to turn it slightly back onto the cylinder. Now, is it possible that when Vince's last shot that it misaligned it? Yes, it is. It is possible. But isn't it, it's rare enough that to bring scrutiny to it. You want to, it's like the carpet fibers. It's like they're not being more dirt on his shoes. And you can explain the carpet fibers away. You can say, okay, this 50-some-year-old businessman threw his suit on the floor. That's not really that likely, is it? And why would the carpet fibers be kind of evenly distributed, like he was rolled up in it? So anyway, those are the things.
He rolled around on the carpet before he shot himself.
Yeah, well, So I have an unofficial theory that a government agency dumped his body. Now, I don't go into any details about it. I don't have anything to back that up other than one time I was in the gym and I was in there with some Secret Service agents and they were busting my chops and we were, teasing each other and busting each other's balls or whatever and pulling each other's chains, as we call it. And I said, hey, which one of you rolled Vince's body up in the carpet and dumped it in Fort Marcy Park? And I'm telling you, it looked like I just punched him in the testicles. And that's the last time I ever joked about it, and I never brought it up again.
Dang.
So I'll leave it at that. It doesn't mean anything other than it was a pretty crazy accusation that maybe offended him. But, so anyway, I talk about it, but I never really wrote about it.
A little bit is hinted in the book, but doesn't go into all that. I have the chats now, so I'll start with the oldest one. I think this must have been when we were talking about Al. I invented the internet gore. Cudwonder Thor just said "man, bear, pig." That's a South Park reference, I believe.
Yeah.
1313 asks. Here comes another one. Well, let's get the joke one too. Frank Mitchell sends $3. It says HRC usually checked her guests for AIDS with her penis. Okay. 1313 asks, what are the chances of professional contractors attempting to neutralize the protective SS detail of a lesser important person and capture the VIP in relation to recent geopolitical threats? So what are the chances of professional contractors attempting to neutralize the protective Secret Service detail of a lesser important person and capture the VIP?
Yeah, so it's a big deal. It has been tested many a times. Do I think it's possible? I do. It would be bloody. The problem is that today's modern warfare machine, contractors, anybody that's been in the military, and not just our military, but a lot of militaries, we've been fighting this war on terror for easily 15 years or more. These are highly trained, motivated individuals. And if you turn to the dark side or whatever, and you want to, and you're going to be involved in that, listen, there's a lot of people out there that could possibly pull that off. Now, the Secret Service has quite a few redundancies and fail-safes, and but it is something I know that they looked at. They looked at it when I was there. It was something that was discussed. They have, different levels of counterattack and defense. Is it possible? Yes. I will add this. I've always thought that an attack at the White House was something that was. The White House has been attacked, but I mean like a full-on, four corners, 25 people on each corner, and somebody, even coming in on helicopters attack type thing. And I'm not talking about a movie, something of a movie. I mean a legitimate, because even if you
Didn't a plane hit the tree in front of the White House?
Did on the south. Yeah, a guy stole a plane and he was trying to land it on the south lawn, and what he didn't know was from the time that he looked at the south lawn till a couple of weeks later when he did it, they had put bleachers up for an event. And when he saw the bleachers, he had to pop up over him. He didn't have enough room, and he ended up smacking into basically he hit the doctor's office window on the south side.
He took out the tree that was on the $20 bill.
Well, he hit it, yeah. Yeah, and that tree's actually, that tree was being held up by a steel pole for years. It was planted by Jefferson, and when it started rotting, part of it was still alive, but they propped it up with a steel pole, and so anyway, the plane hitting it didn't help any.
I forgot you also qualified to do the White House tour, so you know all the little knick-knack facts and stuff that Jefferson planted the tree and all that.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
my excuse is I'm just smart, a nerd, but you got paid. I
sound smart, don't I?
Yeah, it is important to me. It's important to me.
Yeah, no, I love that stuff. I do, and it was never so clear to me how much I ignored my education until I started working there. And it was a little embarrassing at times, the stuff I learned. And I'm grateful for every minute of it, believe me.
Ruby Gypsy just sent a Hamilton to ask, how much influence did Hillary have in the Obama administration? She was an advisor of sorts, so what direction was she trying to take him? I assume you mean once she became Secretary of State, I assume.
Right.
This is not in the book. This is just a general question, by the way, folks.
Right.
I'm
Right.
talking with Gary Byrne, Crisis of Characters, the book. Brett has the link going in the chat.
So here's my answer to that is that, so as far left as you can go, she seemed to wants to always get involved in something that somehow benefits them. And I don't know how crooked if they were, the Obamas were, but there's a funny story when that always struck me. And again, this is a temperature, a thermometer, a dipstick, if you will, to the Clinton mentality. Barack Obama becomes or it looks like he's about to become the nominee. And Bill Clinton is furious because, it's Hillary's turn, supposedly. So, her first turn or whatever.
The first time she lost. Ha.
Yeah. So he's furious, and he's caught publicly saying, Bill Clinton says, they're not fit to carry our bags. So when that's interpreted, people think, oh my God, he's being racist. He's saying because they're black, they're not fit to carry. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that the Obamas were new to the swamp, to politics.
Swamp is a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have not paid their dues. That's what he's saying. It's funny. There's a couple different times where I defend the president because Clinton, just because I know how to interpret him. He's not talking about their skin color. He's talking about they ain't paid their dues, and they certainly haven't paid their dues to the Clintons.
Of all the terrible things about the Clintons, I never heard any stories about them being racist. I'll give them that much. They hate everyone. So
yeah,
there's
no
true. Special hatred. It's just everybody that's not themselves. But I'll tell you something Obama didn't do. He didn't nut all over White House towels.
He did not. He was not walking around. Yeah, so that brings up a funny.
We'll let people get that story in the book because with the lipstick and the rest, and that wasn't even Monica. That was we'll leave it where it is. So, do you want my answer on that too, Gypsy? Is I think when Hillary was Secretary of State that you had Obama the spineless. Like, according to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, the entire Libyan misadventure was at Hillary's helm. That was all her. And you got to blame Obama, too, for allowing it. But that was her plan, and all the repercussions that happened afterward, Benghazi, armaments going to Syria, refugees to Europe, you can hang that all on Clinton. So just imagine how bad it would be if she had got voted in. And you can criticize Trump all you want, but I'll tell you this, could have been worse, and she's it. She wanted a no-fly zone in Syria. That lady is certifiable.
Agreed.
For real. We're talking to Gary Byrne, the author of, first of all, you have multiple books. I don't know if I mentioned the second book is Secrets of the Secret Service. And it's on the Amazon page, too. His name's in the title. Grab that, stick it in Amazon. You can get Crisis of Character, and you can get Secrets of the Secret Service, which is the second book, which has even more information than the first. Did you get a lot of pushback after your first book was released from the leftist media establishment trying to discredit you, or how did the Clintons react also?
So the official Clinton campaign at the time just released a statement saying that I was now in the same category as what was the writer's name we were talking about earlier? Klein.
Joe Klein.
Joe Klein. That I was now like another version of Joe Klein. And
Primary colors, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of took it as a compliment because he's a pretty successful writer. So
so are you? You were second on the charts, right?
Yeah. We were on the Crisis of Character was 11 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and we were number one for 5 weeks.
Number one.
It was bizarre. Yeah, it was incredible. That's all the Clinton campaign said. And of course, then Media Matters and David Brock and all their sycophants, came after me. And the book was released June 28th, 2016, the first book. And so there were 20 different appointments we had. We started our PR in New York for 3 days and then DC. there were 20 appointments, most of them in New York, that were canceled as soon as they got a copy of the book. At first, CNN wouldn't sign the confidentiality agreement. They wanted the copy of the book, but they wouldn't sign the confidentiality agreement because obviously they were going to give it right to the Clintons. Well,
Right.
in the meantime, somehow the Clintons got a hold of a copy of it. And I will tell you, they were relieved when they read it. I mean, yes, it embarrassed them. I told the truth. But there was a lot of stuff I left out. I wasn't trying to, 20 years ago, mine, and there was a lot of, had gone by. And there were a lot of people back then that were in the Clinton administration that maybe then I wanted to slap around, at least verbally. But, 20 years had gone by and they'd gone on with different lives. And I looked up a lot of these people. I did a lot of research, and they were married and they had kids. And I'm like, okay, I can tell the story without burning everybody to the ground. It's still true, but, when a fire department puts out a fire and they use 12 people and you tell the story with 10, the fire still got put out. Mm-hmm. So I didn't relieve anybody of their responsibility if they were really done something wrong. But, then there were some Secret Service employees that were already public knowledge of what they did. So I talked about them. But I didn't out anybody that wasn't. I was careful because, as you discovered when you read Christ as a Character, I inadvertently outed one of the Clinton staffers at the time because I was trying to be so damn honest and true that I inadvertently they were already involved in it, but I made it worse. And I always felt kind of bad for that. I'm not responsible for their behavior, but, I am responsible for mine. And
well, that's the typical Clinton, and I dare say kind of a Democrat thing to do, is rather than accepting personal responsibility for your own actions, you're mad on the person that told on you instead of being mad at yourself for actually doing the crime.
Right.
They're mad at Assange for telling the truth about Clinton. They're mad about Snowden for telling the truth about the NSA. They're mad at people for, it's like, well, how about you shouldn't have done that?
No, right.
Unreal.
So they retaliated by, getting me, basically a lot of these shows dropped me. The people that had me on were Fox, Sean Hannity, and actually there was a lot of radio stations, which even conservative radio stations, quite a bit of them are owned by CBS Radio. Mm-hmm. And I did hundreds and hundreds of radio interviews, and even like, you know who Howard Stern is, and Howard Stern is supposed to be, he'll do anything, and he's this radical guy, and he dropped me. He wouldn't interview me. He buckled from pressure. His producer made one of our PR people swear up and down nobody would ever name names, but apparently Stern's wife or girlfriend, whoever she is good friends with the Clintons, and they. Right, and then it's kind of funny. He just recently interviewed Hillary Clinton, trying to make her look normal. But anyway, and that's exactly what that was about. And so anyway, he dropped me. What was the guy's name that just died? He had a pretty famous radio show. Anyway, he interviewed Diane Imus. Imus interviewed me, but he wouldn't let me get 2 words in. It was basically just berating me because he wouldn't want somebody like me protecting him back in the day because he used cocaine all the time. And I laughed and I said, well, we usually don't elect those kind of people. I think you're mixing apples and oranges. But then he cut me off, and that was it.
There were some, to segue off the cocaine, there were some Clinton staffers that were definitely doing blow.
There was
a lot of drugs and sex and saxophone in the White House at that time.
Yeah,
I'm going to be kind of a dick here and cut this short, but you and I are going to keep talking. But if you want the rest of the interview, you're going to have to pick it up on Patreon. I know that sucks, but I got to make a living. So Epstein didn't kill himself. Sayonara to the plebs, and we'll have the rest of this fully recorded on Patreon.